Welcome to SDR Enablement, our first show. I'm your host, Nicholas Thickett, and this is Jason Stone. And we are going to have a lot of fun talking about the conversations that nobody has. And I think it's important for you guys to know, and I'll let Jason speak for himself, but this has been a profession I've loved for over 20 years. The problem is a lot of the time we don't have an honest conversation about what actually goes into this profession. You know, we've all heard about the game of numbers. But today, we're going to flip the script a little bit, and we're going to talk about what does it actually take to book the unbookable meeting in 2026. What do you think, Jason? What would be your gut feel of what does it actually take to book the unbookable meeting today?
It's an interesting question. I could tell you what it doesn't take: more activity. Right. I think to book the unbookable meeting today takes a lot more intention behind your outreach. The marketplace right now, in my opinion, is broken. Right. I think inboxes are saturated. Decision makers have, built walls that you can't blast through, and you certainly can't do it with volume and templates or AI generated sequences. I think the reps that are hitting quota in the environment, they're not working harder, they're just working differently.
I couldn't agree more. I know a lot of the time people say, well, they have an inside edge, and they do. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize is that inside edge, a lot of the time is research and good networking.
100%.
But really, if I had to ask you from like when you started selling to today, what has really changed?
Well, I mean, not the noise has changed for sure. The volume has gotten. I mean, that's the answer, right? Bad sales math tells us our close rate percentage, and to get to a number that we need to get to, we have to talk to 200 people. Well, if that's the math, your number is going to continue to fall because you're going to talk to 200 of the wrong people, and probably not all 200, right? But you're going to continue to talk to more and more wrong people the more you elevate the conversations, that the number of conversations you have to have. So I think that's changed a lot. When I started selling, everything outreach was intentional because you didn't have all of the noise. You wanted to go make yourself relevant. And I think we've gotten away from that because we're just doing this. We're doing bad work faster and more volume.
So I'm going to read you a couple connection requests that I've gotten just recently. I won't say their names because I don't want to be rude, but
Sure.
Hi, Nicholas. I help founders cut 5 to 10 hours a week by automating email proposals and follow-ups with simple AI workflows. Happy to connect. So what?
Yeah.
Obviously, I never did any research on who I am and what I do either.
Right.
Let's get you another one. Nicholas had some ideas about getting you on more targeted podcasts plus stages for 2026. Is this a focus for you right now? I would say that's a little better.
A little bit. Yeah. A little more relevant to you. They know you do podcasts. He's done some research, right?
This is another one. And I know this person's going to pitch me the moment I connect, so that's why I didn't. But hey, Nicholas, I thought it would be great to connect. Always good to expand your circle here on LinkedIn. So I want to actually break this one down on just how absolutely stupid that is as a statement. Because anybody and honestly, I always tell people my two favorite people to target when I'm targeting a large account, especially Fortune 500, is admin secretaries, like executive assistants are gold, and salespeople, because salespeople are the most responsive. If you have to tell a salesperson that they need to expand their network, they're in the wrong profession.
Correct.
And so when you say that, everything we have, Will, I can't remember which Will it was that went and said it years ago, but he said that we have mental spam filters. And I've always loved that, like how Gmail and all the different email platforms are upgrading how they look at spam and how they detect it. It is so fascinating how we send these messages and it instantly puts off our spidey senses of they're just trying to sell me.
Yep.
So if you had to change that, what is the core to your messaging, or is there anything you think about first before you even write the message?
Yeah, I mean, when we outreach, for us specifically, right, we are trying not to be lumped into lead generation and or cold outreach. We're trying to position ourselves as a strategic answer to that problem, right?
Mm,
So when outbound activity doesn't equal pipeline integrity or revenue progression, why? So we're intentional about asking the question that hopefully provokes a, hey, we have this problem. Like, yeah, I mean, I've heard it 1,000 times. Our reps are hitting their meeting quota, but we're missing our target revenue, right? Our close rates at 10%. And again, that they take that number and that's the multiplier to say this is what we need to get to our quota versus saying why is it 10%, right? And a lot of that has to do with the other piece to this is like you talk about when people don't pay attention to it, you talk about rep, pipeline quota. Well, I can make $1 million in pipeline before I get off this podcast with you, right? So when you have the they're battling initiatives, right? We want them to sell, but they have to have 1.5 million in quota and pipeline. You the pipeline's going to degrade itself over time. It had happened. So we want to talk about that mechanism because it's relevant to everybody. And whether it's, hey, we just fixed it, which is I'd still love to have that conversation because I'd love to know what they do,
yeah.
but it's a relevant problem. And, I can't tell you the number of, I mean, I could pull up emails today that I've gotten and LinkedIn messages that we are strategic outsourced initiative for our clients. And I get probably, no exaggeration, 15, 20 emails a day telling me that they can book us 15 to 20 meetings. Right. And now, is that number real? Probably not. But that's their catch, but that just lumps me into everything else. So it's really about identifying an issue that exists, right? So take healthcare software, for instance, where, when we represent, denials is a big issue for rural hospitals. That's what we want to focus on when our client solves that problem, not increasing revenue because everybody says they can do that. Or you could do that via shorter intake. You could do that for short wait times, all of those things.
Yep.
But increasing denials, that's money that's there. That can add to the bottom line immediately. That's an issue that a lot of them have. And you want to call that out so it makes it relevant to them. Like
I like your
what's in it for me?
I think the one point I want to go back to you had said just a little bit earlier is that like why so they said they fixed it. What actually happened? And the most common thing that I see, and I'm sure you see it too, is status quo one.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting. I talk to reps and they're like, well, our competitors are eating our lunch. Maybe.
Yeah.
Not usually, it's not usually the case.
Right.
And I think this is where meetings become unbookable because we're fighting all the interactions that people have had coming before you. You can honestly look at it like PTSD.
100%.
Like when the first time I became an executive and people started pitching me and I started getting hundreds of emails a day, I started to understand why people either put up as many barriers to their emails or really empower their EAs to do more because it was overwhelming. And then my phone would be ringing and then I never was able to get work done. We even had to go and prolong announcing promotions for 3 to 6 months just so we could actually activate our plans and circle back after the first 90 days because we'd get interrupted with shitty prospecting.
Yeah.
But the question they just never answer is why change? Why now?
Well, that's for sure. I mean, and the interesting thing about that is, and the response that I get a lot when we talk to folks is, well, we need more at bats, right? And my statement's always like, I've never, and I'm not an avid baseball fan, but I watch enough of it to know. But it's like I've never heard someone in a slump say, I just need to get to the plate more, right? They need to understand the pitch count, the runners on base, the out count, what this pitcher likes to throw in a 2-0, setting. That's what they have to understand. So the call, to me, I've always said this, the call is the last step, right? So you don't need to just focus on that activity and the vanity metrics that are rampant, which is, hey, we made 160 phone calls today with one rep. Well, it's a lot wrong with that, especially if you've got a BDR team of 5 to 6 to 10, right? That just adds more variables in the marketplace, and you never know what is and isn't working. But if you get everybody targeted around a message that's relevant and do the right research prior to the call becomes a lot easier, right? And then you're at the plate at the right time versus, guesswork. And guesswork never got anybody anywhere except more guessing. When you do the things that people talk about and adding activity, adding reps, and I talk about the variables, when those variables get inserted into your outreach, I mean, how many times have you seen this, right? You got human nature tells me if I called you and left you a message, and you didn't call me back, I didn't say something that intrigued you or interested you. So I'm going to call you back and leave you another message that's different than the first. By the time I've called you the 5th time, you've gotten 5 disconnected messages from me. But you call me back because that last call was 3 months later. And your need has changed, right? You are now in the market, and it wasn't the message, it was timing. But that message then gets sent to the rest of the group and says, hey, I booked this meeting on this message, and everybody changes to that message. And then they start all over again. And so it's and when you introduce variables into, the marketplace, you never know what is and isn't working. The statement my dad always used to say is, if you have more than one clock in the house, you never really know what time it is.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have, 10 people reaching out 150 times a day, you have 1,500 different messages in the marketplace, at any given time. And that's a difficult thing to overcome. It's a difficult thing to figure out what's working. So there's some intention behind it, but I think everybody focuses on just get on the phone. Well, you burn through your market really, really quickly.
I haven't quite thought about it in those terms, but it definitely makes sense because, I always try to go and focus on unit economics when we're working with a company to make sure that if we do go and do a campaign with them, that they're actually making money.
Yeah.
But the one thing I find really fascinating is when we do validation work, I always focus on the why change, what are those unstoppable forces that are forcing change that people can't ignore?
Right.
And value and need is based on timing.
100%.
Right? And I don't think people realize, to be a priority 1 or 2, timing needs to be within a short timeline, and the pain has to be high. And so, what you had said earlier, it definitely, that is it. But one of the things I noticed the best reps do, not only do they go and use more filters on Sales Navigator, it was really fascinating. We ran this, I audited 1,000 different reps. And so I got to look at their CRM instances and some of their tools. And it was fascinating that the top 10% of reps versus the bottom 10% of reps, the bottom 10% use 2 to 4 filters, which you could probably guess what they are.
Yeah.
Headcount, revenue,
yeah.
geography, industry.
Yeah.
The most basic shit.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. The top 10% use 16 to 24. And so one of the things I found really fascinating, and I want you guys to go and look at your list right now, is there anybody on your list that isn't a qualified person to buy? So don't think about being able to buy. Think about being able to actually use your product or service first. And if you look at your list, more often than not, when companies get blank lists made by people that never actually sell what you're selling, they have no clue. So probably half your list is garbage. So first thing first, what needs to be true for you to win 100% of the time? Kind of like what you were saying, what are they going to throw when it's 2-0?
Right.
What do they need to go in? Do you need to win 100% of the time? Think about those variables. Talk to customer service. See what makes for quick wins and who are the people they like working with versus who are the people they hate working with. And then the other question to ask is what needs to be true what would need to happen 100% of the time for you to never win? And if you compare notes on those, that should be your pre-qualification pre-qualification on your list alone. Now, the next piece is what I don't see most people do, is now you have to go and find triggers for timing. How do you look at this? How do you go and figure out when's the right time to reach out?
Well, so we look at funding. It's important for us because we work with a lot of our clients are in the space of we've built a network referral based business, and we've hit 10 million. It's a good business. It's a need. We've gotten some funding. We want to expand, but we don't know how. We don't have the expertise to do it because I'm the founder and I've been running the business, and I need to hire some people that know what they're doing. So we'll come in and that's a perfect example for us to come in and structurally build something that makes sense. So, because the one thing that will happen is if you get to the point where I just need more at bats, 6 months later, you're going to need more at bats. Like that's never going to change because you're chasing a number that's just not going, it just doesn't exist. So if you build it structurally sound to begin with, and have the intent behind outreach, like your numbers, you start to get predictable. You start to have real pipeline progression, real integrity, and then you can grow at a very mature, modest rate. It might, and who knows if it's an emerging demand, it might be massively inclined. But there's, we look at signals like that. We look at signals where if they've laid off BDRs or laid off salespeople, the one thing they're going to not do is stop selling. But how do you supporting, did they lay off salespeople because it was a bad sales process or they're just bad salespeople? So headcount matters to us in specific areas. New hires in like RevOps, we look at those things. If they're hiring somebody that is, brand new to the RevOps role in the organization, they're likely looking at how to best monitor this, build it, and grow it. So there's some things we look at. I mean, when I first got here, our ICP was any B2B business. It's like, that's not an ICP, right? It's like we had to narrow it down, obviously. And I mean, the reality is we can work with anybody, but to your point, we had to look at CAC, and we had to look at and longevity includes that. There's a point in time where you don't make money. You've got to be able to keep people. So where did we have the most success? What did those companies look like? And what were their size? And then, as you stated, what are the companies that either came on board and we didn't do good work with and left short period of time, churned fast, and who do we never work with? And that gave us that stripped our list massively. So you're right. You've got to look at it. I would love to think we could sell to anybody, but we can't. I'd love to think we could be successful with anybody, but we can't. That's the reality.
And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it helps you get more clear on who you want to serve. Your messaging gets better. Everything gets better. But I just think that people can completely underestimate the power of a strong win-loss analysis.
100%.
But the other thing you had mentioned, and I wanted to go in a little more detail, is when you were talking about recruiting is one of the big ones I look at. Funding's another one. Ratios, rank. And so I'll do a couple different ways. Ratio and rank is kind of my two favorites because recruiting and funding is overused. But I think what is missing when people use these is they don't ask themselves, why does it matter? Like actually think behind the scenes, like why did they make this choice? What was the assumptions when they made this decision that this was the right decision? And so go back to your BDR. What does it signal to you if either BDRs are churning or they're getting rid of BDRs?
Yeah, I mean, it tells me that the system is not working, because if you're churning, you're just putting and you see this in sales teams as well. You just, what happens when you hit your number 1 year, it goes up, astronomically because they're not going to keep you around to keep you, moving in a direction where you're making a lot of money. They're going to make it, well, hey, what makes this person, make us more money? The same thing goes with BDRs. I think when you see a churn in BDRs, it's especially when you see it under the 14-month mark. right?
Mm.
14 months is about average. I also look to see where those, if BDRs have left. If we were tagged to the company, we'll look at where those BDRs ended up. There's some data out there that we can use to do that. If they went from a BDR role to a BDR role, it's likely that, again, that's just churn. The system's broken. They're just putting more effort into outreach and people aren't hitting numbers or making money. And then the sales headcount reducing, specifically when you look at that and they don't have a BDR role, and conversely to that, if they're growing, they don't have a BDR role. That's another good indicator for us. But if they've got no BDR positions filled and they're lowering rep count, that tells me that it's an AE outreach hybrid, right? Which never works. It doesn't work well. What ends up happening is you get a rep that comes in. They have a nice network. They probably exhaust that network over their first 12 months. Probably hit some semblance of a decent number, and then they're out. And just because, listen, I am not good at outbound. That's why I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people that do it. I know I'm not good at it, so I focus on what I am good at. But I certainly am not good at both, right? So there's people out there to find the unicorn that says I'm great at outreach and great at closing. That's really, really rare.
And it's also rare to find the people that partner well to fill that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And it's a hard won battle. And I don't think people give that enough energy and thought, because it's hard work working within, whether you're the BDR, SDR, working with your AE. It takes
Yeah.
really good communication to get that dialed in.
It does. It takes and listen, that's another thing we look at too, is like, what are the layers in a company? Because if we're 3 parts removed from, the ultimate decision makers and the people that are going to be looking at the numbers, we're going to last 6 months, right? Because the person we're actively engaged with, if the needle doesn't move, the result is that the leads were bad, right? And so then we get let go, and sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not, right? Most of the times, because if you like, again, when we book, we don't look at just take the meeting with anybody. We focus on where the buying power and the economic influence comes from in an organization for a specific product or service.
But I think I want to go and point out one thing that's separate than the need for change.
Correct.
But I just want to point it out because we're having this conversation with everybody listening. But I find that people bundle them together and it sells them short, because there needs to be a reason to change with the ability to change, with the financing and resources to
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 make
back
that
that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think whether you look at it as 2 elements or 3 elements, they are distinct. And so we're looking at those signs and symptoms that now, like, they're recruiting for intriguing roles, or it's showcasing that they're prioritizing one thing over another. So there's a shift.
Yep.
Maybe they hired a new leadership because they want to bring in a new methodology, or they just want fresh eyes on it. But I just wanted to highlight that. And then let's go into, sorry, I wanted to go and continue with what you were saying, but I just think it's so important that you need to figure out that why change first before you're ever doing account mapping. And
100.
actually,
Yes.
but I see it all too often that they're like, the way I always look at it is sales is just a murder mystery. The problem is too many people are showing up at their court date demanding everybody else do the work for them.
Right.
You have to have your business case ready when you meet the judge and jury, not starting it. And so I'm a proponent for not going high first unless you've done this a lot. Because there's built up knowledge from talking to people in high levels, plus the accounts that you've actually worked on and seen progress, seen some of the risks that come up, did a little bit of the implementation. Like, that really holds a lot of weight. But a lot of people don't get that experience. They're calling VPs, they're calling C-suite, and they sound dumb because they don't actually have the basic knowledge to go and do it. And it's not because you are, it's just because you're not giving yourself the time to learn before you give yourself a performance goal. And so how I look at it is, who lives in the pain? It has to be frequent and they have to live in it. And what I've called it is mapping the earthquake, and that where that person lives in the pain the most, that's the epicenter where the earthquake starts. And usually the
Yeah.
leadership doesn't feel that. But as it ripples out is what people feel. And it's not until the aftershocks that are really a danger. And so what I'm trying to look at is how does the first ring is those people that live in it. The second ring are those people that report to that they report to. And the third ring is the people that own it. And the fourth people are the kind of come before and after. But I find that a lot of people don't look at how the pain flows through. So when they're doing the cost of inaction or they're doing a business case, it's very generic and it's very simple. So it almost comes across as a commodity product that they're selling as well. And so it reflects in their messaging. Hey, want to join my network? Hey, want to increase your revenue? Hey, would you like 5 to 10 more meetings per month, week, year?
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
But it's because it's so generic. And the thing that I notice, and this is how I do it, is I go and start with usually about 5 to 20 people that I know well. And I reach out to them because I have trust and I know they'll give me feedback. And so I pick them that they're in a similar role to who I'd be wanting to cold call or who I'd want to be prospecting.
Sure.
And if I can't get them with my messaging there, it doesn't matter who I call after that. I'm never, because I'm starting with trust. If I can't get their attention with trust, I failed.
Yeah.
And then I pivot and until I get it. My goal is to get it when I reach out to them and we're just chatting. How do you know that? Do you have access to my computer? Are you like listening into my conversations? How the hell do you know that? Like it's because you're meeting the story that they tell themselves perfectly, and you're hitting on the buttons that they are pointing out as the problems in that story. And then I go to people that are one relationship removed. So I go people that know of me. So think of like referrals. And so I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll just reach out to them using the same messaging, and I keep trying to dial it in. My goal is to get 10 in a row that they're like, this is like, how do you know that? Yeah, actually, we were just talking that in the meeting last week. Once I get that 10 in a row, then I move to complete strangers. But the thing is, you can't stop once. This is how I do my messaging tree. But after this, what I do is I do a debrief and I try to go and figure out why. Why did that messaging work? What would have to be going on for that to be true? What other elements might be important? And this is where I get my signs and symptoms of how to go and find these people. But tying into what you were saying, it's also where I start to go and seed what I think the business case is and where the money and the resources are required to actually make this happen. And going back to my other point, a lot of senior reps, because they've done this so much, they know it, and it's just part of who they are at this point.
Yeah.
And people will watch them sell and they won't even know they're doing it.
Yeah, the best reps. I mean, that's how it comes across. Like and it, the old, lead to the solution, not with it, right? The idea is to build up the fact that we know there's a pain, and here's how you can solve the pain, and it's not, and the cost of inaction. I mean, it goes through all of those things, and I can't tell you like the number of times that we've listened to meetings that we've booked on behalf of our clients, and we've listened to some of the sales calls, and it's all features and benefits dump, and it's never about trying to figure out what they are encountering today and how they can help.
Yeah, strong problem statement wins over features and solutions.
100% of the time it does. I mean, we and that's one of the things we look at when we first engage with a client is what is their messaging. And it's, and ultimately you get a 3-paragraph, 4-paragraph email, and nobody asked to receive that from you today. So we look at how do you reduce cognitive load, and that is, what does this mean to me, and how do we engage? It's very simple. That you don't need, you enter the quick disqualification phase if you give too much information immediately, because A, they're not going to read it and they're just going to think it's irrelevant to them. B, if they do read it and you say a buzzword that they don't particularly have that pain point, they're just going to disregard it as well.
Well, I think it's even to just kind of like I wish more reps would realize that they need to get some acknowledgement that they see the problem first.
Yep.
Like there has to be some, like I always think of like texting a friend. Like, do they see what I see? Because if they don't and they don't think it's a problem, it doesn't matter how much additional information I throw at them, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that you have to go and work with reps on that?
Not ours. I
Oh,
find
no, of course not yours, but people that you're
I find
working with.
yeah, I mean, I find that, if clients would let us, we would. I mean, we do 2 things that are a little bit different than, traditional outsourced outbound is, we when we book a meeting, we bring in relative and relevant data points based on what's important to our clients. So, like we were talking about earlier, what are some of the signals that we would look for? One of our clients was funding was a big one for them, so we'd pull that in. We were representing another example of that was we were representing a company that helps reduce carbon footprint in manufacturing plants. Well, we booked a meeting with a CEO, believe it or not, and one of his statements on his shareholder meeting was that one of their initiatives over the next 18 months was to reduce the carbon footprints in their manufacturing. So we tried to give them something relevant to open the door, immediately establish, some grounds of this is a good entry point for us to talk to. You have commonality, and lo and behold, the rep didn't use it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so that's a perfect example. But we try to give them, the foundation of saying, here are some things that are important based on what your leadership team has told us. And then every meeting we execute, it happens on our system. So we record it. And in discovery, we talk to our clients, like, what are the 5 things you want your reps to accomplish on the call? We'll if they let us, we'll ingest their sales deck, their talk track, and we'll match it up to what happened in the call. And 9 out of 10 times they've missed at least 2 of the 5 things that they want them to accomplish. And more often than not, it's, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Those clients still fire us. It's like, this is not it's not a or it's not a lead problem. It's an execution problem.
Yeah, it really
Right.
is.
So, but that goes back to, like we said, it's like they just line up. Unfortunately, we're not Apple or Taylor Swift, and we can just announce our new product at concert and we have people lining up, right? We have to create a compelling event, and we have to create a desire to learn more and build trust.
Yeah,
And
people are naturally curious. So if you can
yeah,
go and tap into that, you win.
yeah,
And I will point out for people that are listening, what we were just talking about, there is a difference between like going after the big whales. So like Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, enterprise, even some like mid-market too. It's a very different way to prospect because you can get way more information.
yes,
Like one of the things I used to do is I used to call it my little cheat, because I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I know where I can find smart people. And so what I used to do is figure out who are the public companies that can act as barometers for the industry. So if you're looking at tech, say Google or Samsung or Apple. And what I used to do is listen to their shareholders reports and the quarterly announcements. But what I used to listen for more than anything else is I wanted the analysts to go and ask their questions and tear apart their projections, because I wanted to know what the risks were of not hitting revenue. And then I went and tested that out on all the smaller companies to see if that was true.
give me an example of that.
So they were saying years ago that buyer preferences were changing, and that tech was going to be a big boost because buyers wanted to do more without talking to anyone. So self-service portals were going to be a big thing. So the company was building out buyers' experiences that were completely 100% digital with learning libraries. And I can't remember if that was Microsoft or Google that announced that almost 10 years ago.
Sounds like Microsoft.
And so I was like, I would rather not talk to a salesperson if they can't teach me anything and actually help. Like, I can buy a suit. I only need somebody to help me when I need to tailor it.
Right.
So I took kind of that same idea. I'm like, okay, what are the less known pieces of what these companies sell? What are only like the best understand about implementation and where this is going to fail? And And so we created landing pages that just worked as learning portals. And then all we tried to do is, how could we get this in front of people that's not invasive? So we heard of Sweetfish and how they were doing content-based networking. And we're like, huh, interesting. I wonder if we send questions to go and get feedback from people and send them back to this landing page, what would happen? And it took a couple variations and pivots in how we were talking to people about it. But it was about the fifth or sixth thing we tried, got people going there, and they stayed and they asked questions. But the thing that was really interesting is we went and broke it up into 3 different forums later, and we had the one forum, and we just had too many people actually filling it out. Good problem to have.
Yeah, really good problem to have.
But not everybody was qualified or ready to talk to us.
Right.
So we threw in another barrier in front that helped people self-select. And so all this is just having an experiment in mind of something we wanted to learn, letting it play out, then setting a benchmark based on that because we knew after a certain point how predictable it was, and then going, ooh, this isn't exactly what we wanted. How could we make it closer to what we wanted? But it was all based on just that one analyst asking that question of, well, why would, sales has been leading this for years. How are buyers going to go on a self-service portal when they don't understand? But my read into it is that they understand over 80%. It only comes to tailoring that's where the disconnect happens.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's all we tested. Like it was just a simple little thing. But I've had times where we were working with a metals company and they were talking about certain areas of the world having an issue with distribution. And I ended up buying a logistics company to fix it. Like it's little things, but it's just all it is you're a detective trying to find clues and find the synergies are those unknown gaps, A and B, and just connect them. And when you connect them, you start a conversation. And the one thing that I wish more people knew is when you nail the problem statement and people feel like they have somebody on their side, you don't have to do a lot of selling. You have to do a lot of support and helping them build the business case and get ready to buy. You're not actually selling, in my mind, unless some larger companies, definitely with the multi-threading and everything, can get a bit because there's, this person wants this person wants this person is never like this vendor, so you're fighting that. That's a little different. But even with that in mind, if you just show people you care and work and don't rush it per se, I find that you can usually figure it out.
No, I agree. I've always said, I don't ever feel like I've sold anything. I feel like there's a common thread and reason we're talking, and this doesn't go with frontline, right? This goes with anything. Nothing was created because nobody needed it, right? So somebody needs it. And when you're talking to someone, identifying, why they would need it, what has to change. And, just again, like you said, guiding them through that process, customizing it, making sure that, the buying committee is in line, making sure we're within budget, metrics are correct, those types of things, right? KPIs are set. It's just, I don't feel like I've ever sold anything. As a matter of fact, I get a little offended when someone says that.
Me too.
Because I'm just solving a problem.
I want to throw you a little bit of a flip of a question.
All right.
How do you wish that people would prospect to you? Because I want to, and just to kind of frame this for everyone, you run an established company. You get people that prospect you every day, and the reason I wanted to ask you this is I think if young sellers had the experience of sitting in your shoes and seeing the emails and listening to the cold calls over and over and over and over and over again, it would completely change the way they do their work and how they view it, and it would be for the better. So I don't want to say this as a challenge to you. I just think if you could go and talk a little bit of what you see and how you wish people would prospect to you, it would be an eye opener for so many sellers that are trying to navigate this. Because I hear it every day. I get DMs about it every day. I can't book a meeting. I can't hit my target. it's impossible to get a hold of people nowadays. You know, I've only been hearing that for 20 years, but
Right. Yeah.
I do agree. It has gotten worse. Just sorry, I'm being a brat, but it has gotten worse. But there's a
It's
reason
definitely
it's gotten worse.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten worse, and the more technology you enter into it, and again, the more outreach you allow people to do poorly, the worse it's going to continue to get.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I would say that my number one thing is, again, if you reduce cognitive load to me and tell me what the problem is that I experience, right, or that you believe that I experience, and make it relevant. And a perfect example is, right, it's like, my problem is not that I have to wait in TSA security and check my bags, so I need a private plane. Like, that's not, I'm not that guy. We're not, we're doing okay. We're not doing that great. Right. So it's like, I'm not flying private. Right. Those are the things that look like and you could do that in a number
It's a
of
good
ways.
thing he said that. I was gonna say our offsites are gonna be in a very different location going forward.
There's no doubt. Yeah. We get to that point, I will volunteer it. Um, and there are simple things you could do to realize that I'm not in that market. Right. Um, it's really it's relevance, and make it easy.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two things that I look at, and I get, and I'm different than most because we're doing this for our
Yeah.
clients.
A little bit more critical whenever it is your profession.
Yeah. But I also read everything, and
It's a great
I
way to learn.
well, yeah, and I respond, selfishly, I respond to some of it with, "Hey, you guys need some help." Right?
I
Um,
have never done that.
yeah, shame, shame. But and then I would say the other thing too is, just make sure it's doesn't have AI residue all over it. Like,
Mm.
it's like, I can pick that out in a heartbeat, you know, squiggly lines, the no, no email, no fluff, no this, all that kind of just period, period, period. AI uses actually a lot. So when it says that pipeline that
Actually?
yeah, actually, what was that, a while back when I heard I saw a post that said, frankly, or what does it say? Frankly, Apple, I'm tired of your shirt, something like that, for autocorrect. But yeah, I mean, it's so, if you want to use AI to produce a direction, I think that's great, right? But take it and make it your own language, your own words, because when they talk to you,
Oh,
they're gonna
how
realize you're not that
how
bold.
many years ago did we talk about this with script writing?
Oh yeah,
Like, I'm giving you a script as a starting point. Please, God, don't use it forever.
right,
Please. Like, you find your voice,
yeah,
figure out what it sounds like you, and then own it. But I feel like we're just, well, I guess that's the world, right? We're just repeat the same things and it's the same conversations, but isn't it just the same thing? Because AI is a fantastic tool, like the amount of cognitive load that it takes off. But like you said, you still have to put it in their words. I can't remember if it was Ian Cognac or Brandon Flaherty that said to me one time on an interview that they always win when they can when they can put a problem statement together better than what their prospect did. So,
yeah,
like, they understand their problem. They're showing that they understand their problem at such a depth that they are a great asset to their team.
right,
I really love that because I was like, yeah, because if you nail that problem statement and you get the different elements that prioritize this from, say, a 4 or 5 or 6 up to a top 1 or 2,
yeah.
that's a deal. That's an opportunity that should be in pipeline because there is a need to change and there's an appetite for change.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the things we hone in on really closely, is like solving that problem statement. And it's the first big hurdle of us working with a client, because and it's no fault of their own, right? They have a marketing department that tells them they need to say these things and use these words, these features, and they're also proud of their product. So they want to tell you all the great things, but the problem is, you become that Swiss Army knife. And if I don't need a Swiss Army knife, then I'm not making it to the screwdriver that I need. Right. It's so, you hone in on because that's, we all heard the statement, land and expand, right? If you do multiple things within your portfolio, great. What's the one thing that you do really, really well that then people start to trust you and layer on the other things that you do?
Can I tell a story about this that I think
Yeah,
might help people?
please.
So I had an insurance brokerage years ago, and I was not doing as well as I would have liked. But the problem was we just had too many products to sell. Because I had over 120 different products that I could potentially sell on my shelf. And once again, you guys are going to hear these themes, and this is just the start. Me and Jason will be doing this every week, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard, noon Eastern time. I had to go and rethink because I almost went back to the B2B Power Hour days of Friday at 10 a.m. But oh no, ADHD got me. Sorry, guys.
Mortgage products, catalog.
So I did a win-loss analysis again,
Yeah.
and I realized that when I started with, there was only 2 products on my shelf that I started. So when I was selling insurance, I had this one that was a no-brainer product, and all it did is it protected you while you were driving. So they called it Safe Driver. And basically, if you bought this product, it was like $200 a year. If you ever got into a car accident, it would pay you out 25 grand. And just a one-time fee. And if you didn't use it, you got 100% of your money back when you hit 65. And I realized it was the easiest thing to sell, and it started to change the way people were thinking about protecting their family, building a life with their family, uh, just their everyday lifestyle. So it was one of those things I could introduce that would slowly get them to think about things differently.
Yeah.
And then I would come back with something that was disability, because once their income was protected, then we could start building towards a future. When I didn't do that and I did some like life insurance or critical illness or some of the stuff that comes later, it didn't have the same understanding, the same trust, the same conversation that came from it. And so it didn't stick and they would churn. And it was fascinating, like that I could, after looking at a couple different ones, I could see this trend. And then I found out that there was a land and expand play, that if I introduced different products at different times over a 3-year period, that my actual value per customer was about 7 times higher.
Unreal, isn't it?
Because I used to go in, they taught us to go big or go home. So you'd go in and
Right.
you'd sell like a big whole life policy or a big universal life policy because you make great money on it. But it was fascinating to me when I broke it down and I didn't rush and I actually looked at the numbers over 3 years. Those 3 years, I was up 7 times, even those big deals that I sold. And once I understood that, even talking to SaaS companies, because most of what I do is go-to-market consulting for tech. And it's just so interesting to show them the same things. Like we said before, the world hasn't changed that much, just how we show up. Like now we have social media and now we have the internet. We're not selling telegrams. Like
Right. Yeah.
some slight changes, but
Right.
not much has changed because humans haven't changed that much.
We have not. No. We've
Uh,
we've we've gotten more resistant to, outreach and to, openness. And but the need hasn't changed, right? The challenges still they haven't changed drastically.
no.
That's fascinating though that you looked at that, because that one of the things that we looked at was, when we were sold a deal, it's, and we'd inevitably fall into the trap of we need more at bats. So we'd produce a max volume, outreach model that's, 50 meetings a month, and it's like $40,000 a month. That person will never talk to us again, because we just, we got the happy face and said, well, this is a massive deal, instead of understanding what their budget was, what the true need was, what are their goals, because the real reality was they were using bad sales math to get to a number that they thought was manageable to sell through. But if we would have flipped the script and said, well, let's talk about that math first. Why are you only selling 15%? and then do that diagnostic of who are you talking to? What are your longer sales cycle? What are the likenesses of the companies and the likenesses of the personas? We'd have done that. We could have cut that deal in half, probably won it, and put them in front of the people that could actually move a deal
And
faster.
would have probably had killer momentum going through it too.
Yeah, but we didn't. We failed. We failed in that.
You live and you learn. And guys, like these lessons, the reason why we're telling them we're being so vulnerable with you is we think it's important. Like doing deal reviews, being honest about your performance is the only way that you can improve. And you hear us talking about it because we don't want to hide from our scars. We earn them. And now because we've made those mistakes, we can now change the way we show up in order to go and do something that's more effective. But you have to admit that something didn't work in order to move forward.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about, because we only have a few more, we have about 5 minutes left. I just wanted to talk just very briefly and how you think about channel selection. How do you pick? Do you cold call? Do you email? Do you social media? Like how do you and your team think through where to start, or do you just focus on a primary channel? What does that look like?
Yeah, we start everything with a phone call, and now we will do some event support that will typically run through. That we kind of flip the script there. We email first, and try to get a response because it's relevant to them. It's right that's the compelling event. Is the event is coming up, and then what we didn't get a response from, we layer into calling and going from there. But yeah, so we'll do things like LinkedIn, or we'll do calling, and our goal and outreach is obviously to book a meeting, but we also want to uncover, like, the great thing about any data source you have is that it's useful. The bad news is it's 30% inaccurate and it gets worse every day, right? So when we call in, we verify a lot of data. We will have done pre-research. Again, calling it starts before the call. So
Yes.
we know that we ultimately want to end up with a, chief financial officer or VP of finance. We've pulled those people in. We verify that those are actually the people in seat. And you'd be surprised. I mean, it matches up. It's about 30% of the time they're inaccurate. And people on the other end of the phone, because of the way that we've engaged them, will help us correct that. And they'll give us the right information. And now we have updated, and so does our client, updated contact list that is, real time, been verified. So that's the reason we kind of work our way through the organization, and to drive accountability. I've always said what my boss finds interesting, I find fascinating. So if we can let things get to someone and utilize the referral that we had, say, hey, I just talked to Nicholas and he thought it'd be a good idea if we connected and talked about boom, and then we'd take the problem statement. So everything starts with a phone call for us, and then we'll follow up via email. Where references get leveraged, we go into LinkedIn and we'll mention the voicemail or the conversation we had with an admin, and and the fact that we sent an email. We try to make everything relevant, and it's obviously LinkedIn forces us to, because I don't let my folks. I mean, we have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but I don't like for them to use it to outreach, because there's two indicators in LinkedIn, free LinkedIn, is that you go in and you get a connection or you get a reply to that connection request, right? But you also are forced to use very succinct, straight language. Like, you just can't word vomit on like you can in Sales Navigator. So it forces.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Because I was thinking when you first started talking about it, I'm like, well, it's nothing wrong with using InMail because you get your InMail credits back if they reply.
Yeah.
But then as you kept explaining, I'm like, oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
because how have you found this? I find that if I'm any more than 2 sentences, I'm toast. And
Yeah.
if I can get it down to 1 sentence and skip the bullshit, like, no, it's interesting, like some simple pleasantries. It also throws off their mental spam filters. I find I have to almost like I'm texting a friend.
Right.
It's about,
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, the old story, right? When we used to do on-premise sales, and create some commonality. And that commonality, it used to not be the problem statement. It used to be, you see a fish on their wall, you're like, oh, you fish, I fish, my dad took me fishing, and then all of a sudden you're best friends. And that's what people try to do in LinkedIn a lot. And even in outreach, they talk about, oh, I saw your post, I agree with you so much, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, of course you're going to say that, right?
I don't mind if they do that if it's genuine. That's the key. If it's genuine and we can nerd out on it, I'm in.
Yeah.
But most people can't.
Well, that's how
no
you and I
interest.
connected.
Yeah.
Right. We started.
Yeah. I guess we call a spade, right? We went and me and you just had a great conversation off of shared interests, and it works. It will always work. It's human nature. We are curious creatures.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if you get, more than 2 sentences, it's just dead space.
So what I'm thinking maybe next week, because we're at the tail end of our show here, why don't we go and talk about channel selection, and let's go work through a couple of examples showing people like how we think about when to cold call. Because just a little bit of a spoiler, I don't disagree with you. I just do it differently and for a reason.
Sure.
But I would love to go and have us hash this out, because I think it would be good conversation, and we can tease out that process a little bit more. Do you have any parting words for our viewers? The one thing I did want to tell everybody, though, is please get in the comments. I know today, because this is our first one, you guys, a lot of people watch it later and watch the recording. Still, get in the comments, ask your questions. We will answer them, both of us, and they will also be used for future shows. So nothing goes unnoticed. We appreciate any feedback you have.
Yeah,
Jason?
For sure. Yeah, I always say, and I'll leave it with this, like, the goal is never to book a meeting. The goal is to give someone a compelling reason to want to. The meeting becomes the byproduct. If you look at it like that, and you try to solve, as Nicholas said, right, you try to solve that mystery, I think you're going to see the unbookable meeting being able to be booked. And you really, if you just focus on the meeting being the byproduct, give them a reason to want to.
You give them a reason to want to, and then the rest will take care of itself.
That's right.
Now I'm going to go back to tradition to go and end our show. It is 2026. It is no longer acceptable to suffer in silence. Sales is a hard job. If you need help, reach out. It is a sign of strength, not weakness. You don't need to buy anything. Just get in the comments, shoot us a DM. We are here to support you. That's why we're here. So make sure that you know that's there. And thank you so much for episode 1 of SDR Enablement. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.